quiet seaside town, an evil laid to rest centuries ago, has risen. An abandoned fortress deep in the swamp holds a secret that could save the village or destroy it. Now, a band of adventurers sets out to dig up the wounds of the past and bring the light of day to the roots of ruin. This is Tabletop Gold.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Tabletop Gold, the podcast as we're calling it now. It's episode 6 of our ongoing Pathfinder 2 campaign, The Roots of Ruin. My name is Lars Casteen. I'm your game master. I'm your friend. I'm here today to play a game of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And I am joined today, let's go in opposite order as we did last time.
Which is now the normal order?
Normal order, standard pitching rotation. Let's go. David Chernicoff, hi.
Howdy.
Howdy. Robin Lange, how are you doing? Nope, just Robin and Lange. Hi. Hi.
Gotcha, or got me. Hi, Lars.
Hi, Zoe Chernicoff.
Hello.
And R. Matt Humphreys.
Howdy, y'all.
Arman, I'm surprised that you're still on this podcast, given that your character is dead. What's that all about?
Oh,
I mean,
dang.
I thought I was the weakest link. I assume you're all here to just roast me for the rest of this episode and then, give me the boot in the ass on the way out.
Oh,
really.
naturally.
Wouldn't that be a horrible, trend on a podcast? Is now that somebody has suffered from something kind of unpleasant, let's just really unload on them for an hour and a half.
I mean, isn't that just Reddit and the internet?
Yeah, I guess so.
Real talk.
That's crowdsourced abuse, I guess.
Sorry, is this not an AAR, like a military style AAR where we go over all of Matt's errors that led to his character's death in painstaking detail?
You know,
that sounds so good to me.
We're kind of joking around, and I don't want to be I don't want it to feel uncomfortable or anything like that. But I do think that there is something to be gained because we're all new-ish at this game. Some of us have more experience than others. I think it would be worth talking about how people felt about that combat, because it was kind of a big deal. I think that everybody knew going in that it was going to be difficult. I think that we kind of that was, I think, communicated. But that combat encounter last week, I think, is going to be something that is potentially going to reshape the story of the rest of this campaign. So I think it's worth kind of talking about how you guys feel about what you feel like what went wrong, what you think went right, that kind of thing.
We need to roll better dice.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah.
That would help.
We need to cheat, I guess. No, I think in many ways it was, as I'm now thinking about Trill's character going forward, many of the things that are kind of going in through Trill's mind are also things that are going through my own mind. Bards are supposed to be better support characters than this.
Yeah, it's funny how, a game like this, I think especially a relatively crunchy game like this one, how the rules for the game and the things that your character is thinking and the things that you are thinking often align very cleanly, because there just are so many rules that that tell the story of the situation, and you feel them as a player in addition to them being reflected in the world of the game or whatever.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really love about this game is it feels like not only are you building this narrative character, you're also building this chess piece that expresses that narrative character on the battlefield in a really cool way. So Mag's rage is not just a narrative part of who she is as a person. It's also tangibly and mechanically represented when you're on the field, which I think is really cool. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
nerding out about this game.
No, I agree. I agree with you. What do you think you guys could have done differently, aside from rolling dice with higher numbers on them? or was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything that caught you off guard? Because like Robin, you have a lot of experience playing like D&D. I know you've played a lot of 5th edition. I don't know if you've played other...
Just 5th.
And like that fight did not feel like a 5th edition fight, right?
It was one thing I realized I had to think so much more about. I was doing a little journaling, thinking about what Trill was thinking. And a lot of the choices that I had to make as the player were based upon the whole action,
like the 3-action economy.
Yeah, economy. There you go. The 3-action economy of that, wherein I couldn't just toss Haplo the last healing potion. As much as I wanted to, Trill had to make a choice. Because there was only so many things she could do, since she also had to move. And moving itself was one of the actions.
Yeah. And that's when it's like things like, is my move speed 25 feet or 30 feet per round? Those things start like mattering a ton. And you realize like these little incremental changes that you can make to your character can be the difference between life and death in this game.
Yeah, and when we're up against like those little blue guys, you know, the Mifflets, it was our first fight as a group. So that was the intensity of that for us was the first time we were doing this together and figuring out how to work with each other. But this one, it was such a different enemy. It was so much more powerful, so much more damaging that it became a very different fight very fast.
Totally. And the environment in the room, like the fact that there's like that broken glass all over the place.
You had to think about, can I attack from the hall? Where should I be hiding behind someone? And then it's the constant flow of trying to manage both your own character, but also the character's role within the group in these types of settings. And also, even if you think something would be the better move if you were there, there's also something to be said for trying to stay in character. There are things that I would have done differently if I had a different character, but it didn't make sense for Trill to do those things.
Yeah.
I play a monk when I'm in D&D, and she is the opposite of Trill. She is slow and calculating and does not do anything without thinking very carefully first and being very sure of herself.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything? I feel like I can just keep chatting with Robin for the next 45 minutes about this, but if anybody else wants to jump in.
I have two things I can offer. They're just not, they are less mechanics based. When I was listening to the episode again, two things struck me. One was how little I remembered of what happened after Haplo died. I remembered like the basics. I knew that we like went back and we learned things from Tabletop. I remembered what we learned, but all of the stuff that was in between of like working out what we were gonna do and like intimidating the little fey sort of gnome creature. I just was completely. I was like kind of just kind of shocked by the whole thing. I think, and I feel like David. Like the fact that I remembered so little of that was kind of similar to, again, like you're saying, Robin, like with sort of Mag's state of mind she was kind of shell shocked. So I was kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't have thought about it like that. Yeah, exactly. Just sort of out of it. And then the other thing is, one thing I noticed when listening to the episode was we were talking from the very start of the episode about the prospect of somebody dying. And we made, like, Lars said it, we said it a couple of times, like, and it's still, when it happened, I was still completely floored. Like, I was, even though we literally, like, one of the first things that we said was, well, someone's gonna die. And I feel like, I mean, I don't want to go too, far down the road here, but I have not myself personally experienced a ton of loss in my life. But I know that it's a thing. And like I understand that it's out there, and at some point it will happen to me, and I will experience it directly. But right now, it's still sort of the idea, and I feel like that was what happened that was what happened in the episode, was like we were referencing the fact of this thing being possible, and it was completely real to me that it would be possible. And still, when it actually happened, I was still completely thrown for a loop. And I even listening back to it, I was just taken to a really
and I feel
unexpected place.
It's also on the heels of this year where each in our own ways, right? We have spent so much time trying to avoid anything catastrophic happening to ourselves or our families or our friends, whatever your pod or nuclear family has been in the last 15 months, right? I feel like we've all just been living on edge about how do we stay safe? How do we keep anything like, I, at least speaking for myself, I've been so much more risk averse, and I'm not, I think I'm naturally a risk averse person, but like, I don't know, having something bad happen after this year feels additionally poignant or something.
And it's such what you were saying, David, also about how like trying to deal with this loss, even if it is, a theoretical loss, an imaginary loss, when you yourself haven't had tons of experience with loss. That's one more thing that informs our characters in ways that I don't think we think about going into these things. That if we haven't experienced certain emotions, when our characters start to experience them and start to go through these experiences that we haven't had ourselves, more emotional, of course, as a person, I don't think I've ever come across a Mifflet on the streets of New York City. I mean, maybe it is New York City. You never really know. I just got to go down the right alley. Yeah. But as far as thinking about going through, wandering around on her own for years, like this that's very foreign to me. And it's hard for me to wrap my mind around these experiences sometimes as we think about these characters. That's such a great point, David.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know enough about psychology, but is it like parasocial? Is this a parasocial relationship, but we're having it with ourselves?
Yeah.
Anywho.
We've created a lot of problems, I think, just by deciding to play this game.
Or just brought them to light.
As a tactical aside, for me, I will always feel like that fight turned around at the Westport Library. And so, no joke, I have created a tab in my browser bookmarks tabs. So if things are getting hairy, I can open that before a roll as a sort of talisman. I'm just putting it out there that anyone else who wants to have good luck could consider doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to look this particular gift horse in the mouth. If the Westport Library, no matter how it came our way, if that's going to be the difference between failure and success, if we could get sponsored by some public libraries.
Right. So far, I think we're going for Coke, Disney, and the Westport Library. So that's
the big three.
The big three. Zoe, I'm really glad you brought this up because it lets us take just a moment for the absolutely incredible maneuver and turn that Trill had, where she she kept two characters alive on one turn, and then on the next turn did just absolutely massive damage to that thing. And I couldn't quite track the exact math when going back through the encounter. All I remembered when it was over was that Mag had done essentially no damage whatsoever. But I think in listening back to it, we sort of set up with like two in the front line, like, okay, we got a fighter and a barbarian. We'll like set them up in front, and then we'll let the gnome and the dentist kind of skulk around in the shadows. But in the end, I'm pretty sure that Trill and Norman between them did 30 points of damage, and Mag and Haplo between them did 8.
Yeah, you guys were just there as the sponges.
Absorbed 30 points of damage.
That's right.
Yeah, right. You took the hits, you didn't deliver them.
Yeah, that was our role in that fight.
That was my proudest moment in any tabletop game ever, getting max point. Like, that was max damage. She rolled a natural 20 and then rolled maximum damage on the die.
It's Trill's party. We're all just standing around in it.
It's Trill's world.
Do you think that there was an opportunity, though, to save Haplo's life there?
Oh, that's what
keeps her
now.
Up at night, Lars.
This is what's going to keep Trill up at night, because it was try this attack. If I don't try this attack, she's thinking if I don't try this attack, it could kill all of us, or I get this healing potion to Haplo. It was one or the other. And so she could have saved Haplo, but Max could have died next then.
And Haplo could have died next
and
also.
And Haplo still could have died.
The doll could have absolutely knocked Haplo down one more time.
Because that doll was doing serious damage.
Yeah.
I mean, every single time you were doing
yes.
bonkers moves with that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That thing
Yep.
was really. It had a lot of hit points. It only. If I
And that
have my
double
information.
attack. It wasn't even that it had a ton of hit points. The hit points was a reasonable amount for that level. It was the attacks that knocked us down to the point where we couldn't get a good hit in.
And it appeared on re-listen to have a special ability where it only rolled 27s.
Yeah.
It was.
That's
only
That's
capable
built
of
in.
rolling 24.
yeah. That's a module that I installed in Foundry VTT that actually makes I think
Good
really helps the
looking
game out a lot. I think it really improves the quality of the play.
It definitely speeds up combat.
Yeah. Yeah, it really gets new characters out a lot faster. It helps combat encounters move along at a good clip. I like it.
We measure success here at Tabletop Gold by total number of characters rolled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we jump on into it, right? Why not? A dark cloaked figure walks a road at twilight. Nearby, there's just the glow of firelight and a few small farms and their outbuildings scattered in the clearings and pastures around the road, which leads deep into the darkness of the copse of trees. A scream suddenly breaks the night air, and from behind the figure, there's the sound of someone running in approach. The man draws his sword in a flash and raises it high as he turns, before turning the blow aside, a hair's breadth from where it would have slashed, a young farmhand in peasant's clothing, carrying a sputtering torch.
You should not sneak up on an armed man, friend. It is not wise in these dangerous times.
The farmhand flinches. Please, sir, I meant no offense. My master had ordered us to break down the walls of the old Velmar crypt, so that the stone could be used for construction and some kind of... And here the boy shudders before continuing. An undead monstrosity attacked my elder brother, Lucio. You must help us. You are a warrior.
I am not a warrior, boy. I am a priest.
But you carry a blade, the boy babbles. You must be a warrior. Please, you must, please. Oh, gods, I fear it has followed me. Before the boy can even finish his sentence, the appearance of a shambling figure at the edge of the wood proves his words' worth. A dry smile crosses the man's face, and he looks up to the sky with a mixture of exasperation and amusement.
You do like to keep me entertained.
The man drops his traveling pack and strides across the field. His blade glints in the torchlight. As the man steps within the corpse's reach, it lurches forward, throwing itself at him, trying with some low cunning to tangle him in the weight of its dead limbs. But the man nimbly dodges, and then there passes, too fast for the untrained eye of the farm boy to discern, a rapid exchange of sword strikes and ragged flailing of dead flesh. Thrust, parry, slash, dodge, counter. And the hideous thing's head slides from its neck, tumbling to the ground, and the man has already turned his back on the once again lifeless remains, stalking back towards the road, flourishing his blade, flicking the vile thing's black ichor from it. The boy weeps with relief. Sir Knight, oh, thank you. You must join us for a meal, repayment, anything. He reaches out to clutch at the foreign man's hands, and is shocked as they are pulled out of his reach. The man stops but does not turn around as he speaks.
I require nothing, lad, least of all from you. All I wish is to continue my travels. The Lady of Graves bids me onward. Go home, live your life. Or don't. It is all the same to her.
The farm boy watches his strange savior go for as long as he can, until finally the last ember on the horizon is snuffed out and the full night falls.
go.
So, okay, good to go. It's around 11:30 in the morning on this early spring day, and Mag, Trill, and Norman start working their way back to town with their fallen ally's body in tow. So what's the plan here? You were talking about potentially taking the boat around the perimeter. Do you want to do that, or you just want to retrace your steps to get out of the this dangerous area?
How's Mags feeling about carrying? Do we want to do a boat, or do you want to carry? Because you're the one who's got all the weight.
Yeah. I don't know that we know that the boat will lead us back to town. Like, I guess we have some reason to think that thieves brought it up, so there's probably a waterway. I think Mag could get the body back.
I think we should leave the boat and not have to bring it to town and bring it back, as long as you feel good about getting Haplo's body back.
My first thought was retrace steps, and I think she can. It'll be fatiguing, but I think she can handle it.
Okay.
And you know that the boat won't take you directly back to town, but because you're on an island right now, the boat could potentially take you around the waterway back to the watchtower where you started, but you absolutely don't need to take the boat. I just want to clarify that small geographic point. There's not like a river leading back to town.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should just walk.
We'll sadly walk back together.
Trudging.
Man, we weren't even how long were we even at Gauntlet? 2 hours?
Worst 2.5 hours of our lives.
Oh my God.
So you start on the trail back from Gauntlet to Otari. The going is considerably slower than the journey out to this place, due, of course, to the extra weight that you're carrying back. After a while, the sounds and smells of the swamp recede, and you're back in the forest that you know better. It's a more heavily trafficked place. It's a place where people go. When you walk past a logging camp, work stops for a brief moment as people turn their heads to watch you with a mixture of curiosity and pity. And as you walk out the opposite edge of the forest, you see on the hill in front of you the town many of you call home. And it's at that moment that things come into focus. This morning, you walked into this fortress, wandered around for a little bit, and then one of you got killed. You got there at 8 a.m., and you're dragging your companion's body home before it's even noon. You continue walking the trail back to Otari. You're on the outskirts of town. What would you like to do?
I mean, do we just walk right into town with him?
Did the old sport have any family? Mags, you were from around here. You might have known him best. Did he have any people we might bring him to?
I only ever saw him keeping his own company.
None of you have any knowledge of family for Haplo.
Should one of us go talk to Wren first before we...
Oh, I could do that. Norman eagerly volunteers.
You're faster than I am. I got short legs.
We need to bring his body back for its last rites.
Well, yeah, but what if we... Where do we even bring him? I mean, maybe some of us should wait. Maybe Norman just goes and asks Wren, and then the rest of us just wait here with the body, just with Haplo.
We could bring him to Dawnflower Library. There are good people there. They've taken me in when I've needed help.
I think that would be a fine resting place for the old sport. I think he'd like it there, at least as a last goodbye before they put him in the ground.
Okay, so Norman's going to go to Wren, and Mags and I will take Haplo to the library. But of course, the library, we've got to go through all of town, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. The path to the Dawnflower Library does lead through town, as does the path to Wren's shop.
But before we go, what are we telling everyone about what happened?
We tell them the truth. I've been trying to tell people there was danger in the Fog Fen for years, and no one's ever believed me.
Here's where I'm coming from, and hear me out. I think people are going to be pretty surprised when we, we haven't been gone that long. When we show up with this old guy, he was a local, and at least Trill and I weren't. So the way I see it, a demonic bird doll with some sort of dark gem that, Trill, you keep saying makes you feel sad inside, that it killed him. And I just think we should all make sure that point is clear. And I'm not so sure we should go telling the people in town that there's a ray of ghosts that will destroy anything it touches. I think that's going to be a bridge too far.
Now, Max, I know you're going to find this statement hard to swallow, but I think I agree with Norman.
Mag, shifts Haplo's body uncomfortably in her arms and stares out toward the horizon. Me too.
You start working your way through town, down to get to the Dawnflower Library. You essentially, to get there, have to go straight through the middle of town.
Norman stays back to go to Wren's, which is on the back northern edge of town.
So I'm going to say, before you're even able to make that turn off,
okay,
you attract the attention of a person that you all recognize as the captain of the guard. Captain Lardus Longsaddle is his name. He's a hardy, elderly man with long, gray-red hair under a beat-up helmet. He sees you approaching, walking solemnly with your comrade's body, and just says, "For Abadar's sake, is that crazy old elf?" He walks towards you and extends his mace to tip the body, to tip Haplo's face back to get a good look.
He wasn't crazy.
What the fuck did you people do?
You see Trill, like, her purpley blue hair, like, it's almost like sparks are starting to come off of it because she's so enraged at this, the language he's using to talk about her friend, she didn't know him for long, but he became a friend.
As this conversation sort of starts, people walking by turn and notice what it is that's happening. You see a couple people rush off, presumably to tell others around town what's happened. Word spreads quickly in a place like this. And Longsaddle continues, I guess it's not too surprising that it wasn't exactly the pillars of the community that got this guy offed. He sort of looks at all three of you. He's like, got the town crazy, always yelling at people about what's going on in the swamp. We got the obviously a criminal here.
I assume he's talking about Trill?
Yeah. And of course, you've got the musician with you, don't you?
And what's wrong with that?
Look, you got to turn that body over to the garrison. People can't just get killed in this town without the law stepping in.
Now, sir, says Norman, smiling broadly, we wouldn't do anything but what the law wants. He was a noble man, and, well, we all had a real fright when the most unbelievable, and his eyes start glowing as he sort of animates, the most unbelievable demon bird came. It nearly killed us all. We were lucky to get away at all, and we did the best we could by the old guy. And he sort of, you can tell, like, the emotion and the excitement for him is real, but he kind of manufactures one tear to slide down his cheek.
He looks at you and spits on the ground. Fuck.
We all process emotions in our own way, bud. And Norman sort of strides past him, kind of hoping the others will follow.
Trill's eyes are just very narrow and glaring up very high at this jackass.
He snaps his fingers a couple times, and two more members of the town guard run up and hold out their arms to take Haplo's body away from Mag.
Well, I see you want the old man's body, and we'd be willing to give it up. but you need to know what killed him. We've been north into the fog fen, where there are great dangers. She turns, sweeps away from the guards toward the crowd that has gathered and raises her voice slightly to address the group. Dangers that I've tried to warn you about. Dangers that are real. Dangers that can take a life if left unattended. The old elf died, and now we have proof for you. The threat north of us is real. And with that, she turns back to the guards and leans down slightly to their height and holds Haplo's lifeless body out for them to take if they're strong enough to bear it.
Trill comes and stands next to Mag and tries to get up to her full height of 3'5" and says, "The spirit of Belcora is not gone."
He clears his throat. He's like, all right, well, if you idiots even think of wandering too far, I'm going to track you down and bring you back. So just stay in the area. My boys will take care of this right now. And he sort of waves you off. And he looks at you. He does that thing that the principal from the Breakfast Club does, where he points at his eyes and then points his fingers at your eyes.
Mess with boy, you get the horns, young man.
You mean the thing I actually do to my students?
Oh, do you?
Oh yeah, never seriously, but I absolutely do that.
Do you ever catch them doing that dance on top of the library railings?
Oh my gosh, if they did that, I'd join.
Well, that's the only rational answer.
There's something I want to tell you about, which is a system in this game, which is that different characters that you run into can have different attitudes towards you. Based on this interaction, it seems likely that you will run into people that are unfriendly to you. The 6 different conditions that people can have are hostile, which means that they will attack you. That's like what the Mitflits and that doll were. Hostile, unfriendly, indifferent, helpful, friendly, and then helpful. If you want to change that, you can try to use your diplomacy. You can try to impress them. You can try to do things with them that will make them more friendly to you. But you are sort of starting from a little bit of a deficit here. Once word gets around town.
I might need to sing a song.
You might need to sing a song to make people forget about what has happened. That better be one hell of a song. So what would you guys like to do now? Haplo has been taken to the town garrison. The head of the guard is paying pretty close attention to what you guys are doing. So what would you like to do?
I think we should just follow the plan we already came up with.
Okay.
Which is Norman go to Wren and Mag and I go to the Dawnflower Library and talk to maybe the Priestess of Sarenrae.
Okay. So Norman heads off to the west.
Like that everyone's just like, sure, whatever Robin said works. No debate.
But that was the plan, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, I feel good about the plan.
My moon-eyed silence was me realizing that in fact because I have not been looking at the game board tab in my browser the whole time, of realizing that the map had moved and we're back in town and there's a really pretty blue river, and I was just completely like, oh, pictures.
It's a good town map.
Yeah, I like the map of this town a lot. It's cool because it's like, the way this adventure is set up, this is going to be a place that you return to a bunch. There are a lot of different people. There's a lot of different things going on. There's no pressure to do everything, to see everything, but there's a fair amount of depth, and I really like the way that this community of this town is set up, and I hope you guys enjoy it also.
By the end of it, we will have all earned our "Don't Hassle Me, I'm Local" t-shirts.
Yeah. Yeah. Norman breaks off and heads down the street to the west, circling back to Wren's Wonders, which is the magical supplies, magical curiosities shop that Wren Savinxi is the proprietor of. The first thing you notice about Wren's shop is that it is not a building in the standard sense. The structure consists of a ring of what appears to be standing stones arranged in a 60-foot diameter circle surrounding a 15-foot high dome of wooden beams covered with triangular pieces of canvas. Norman, as somebody who has been here before, knows full well that these stones that track the circle surrounding Wren's shop are actually fabricated from wood frames and canvas, cleverly painted to resemble granite. The main thing that stands out about Wren's shop is that the fabric of the dome, most often, except for when it's raining, is pulled aside so that shoppers can admire what's for sale in the light of the sun or the moon, for that matter, as this shop is always open. So, Norman, you're able to push your way into the shop. There are no customers at the moment. You look up, you see the sun shining into the shop itself, and you see Wren, the tall, opaque-eyed, horn-bearing, elven tiefling proprietor of the shop. She looks up, rolls her eyes, and says, "Oh, hello, Norman."
And he very performatively smiles broadly and gives her a big wave and says, "Could I speak to you for a minute, perhaps somewhere privately?"
She looks back and forth, making sure that nobody else is approaching, and pulls the canvas shut, tying a string to close the canvas door and touching her finger to it to lock the door from any potential invaders.
Just like they do at 7-Eleven when they want to, shut down for a couple hours. And as she does that, you see a couple of things happen. Norman's demeanor starts to crumble to much more sort of guarded and upset, and fur begins to coat the outside of his body as he changes form to a slightly smaller, gray-furred fox, and the fox begins to cry.
Wren turns towards the former Norman and falls to her knees and says, "Oh no, what has happened?"
Wren, we lost someone. We were only there a couple hours, and I thought from what you said it would be exploration and magic and treasure and that old elf, he's just dead. And she weeps again for a minute.
Tell me what happened. I'm deeply sorry for what you faced. I had no idea that the stone scale kobolds that lived there would present such a threat.
Kobolds? We didn't see kobolds. First there were these little blue creatures, and they shouted things at us, and they were sort of annoying and whatever. And then
wait. The kobolds were not there?
No. Well, there was one kobold, and I sort of threw it at a toad, but that was because the toad was trying to eat me, because I went around the lake because I thought there'd be some treasure or some magic, and then we had to kill the toad, and we walked inside.
Okay. Let's slow it down a little bit.
And the fox takes a breath or two, and she's sort of trembling. And look, here's what you really need to know. We found a boat, and then we crossed a bridge. After we went through the keep, we couldn't get up to the light at all. It seemed too far. And we found this little fey creature, and it pretended to be a ghost, and it all seemed so funny and silly, and it told us to get a shiny thing. And she pulls the spyglass out of her back pocket where she stuck it. And it turns out it was this. And it said it had some secrets for us. And we went in, and there was this horrible tiny doll, and it just killed him.
A doll?
It was a bird. And then she reaches into her other pocket and pulls out the bird's head, which she removed from the bird. It was this thing, and it had a gem in its back, and the little fey thing told us, or I guess
it had a gem in its back.
It was I don't know. It was animated by some guy that the fey creature told us about. And Wren, what is it that you think I'm supposed to find there? I don't know if that's the right place for me or for you or for anyone.
All I was shown by the stars was the image of some great, horrible danger coming from that lighthouse. I did not know that that danger would lead to a tragedy within my own friends. The wisdom that the stars show me doesn't give me all of the answers. I want you to know that although, and this will be hard for you to hear, although I feel great sympathy and great regret for what has happened, I do think that it is the will of the stars that you continue to do this dangerous work.
The fox looks shattered and scared, and she's taking this in, and she clearly has a great reverence for Wren, and she's sort of absentmindedly fiddling with the bird head in her right hand, and then you see her stop, and she sort of levitates the spyglass in her left hand, and she looks at Wren and she says, "Do you think it's tied to this?" Sort of gesturing with her hand to the levitation and her ability to move things around through the air.
She walks back behind the counter and sits down in the stool that she spends much of her day sitting on. And she says, "Now, the source of your powers is a mystery I have thought about for a long time. I look to the stars every night about that, and I get no answers. I do not believe they are related, for why would the stars be so vocal on one account, but silent on another?"
And the fox's shoulders sort of slump, because she was sort of hoping that this would all be a neat and tidy package, but you can tell in the way that teenagers have, she's not entirely convinced. Like she's decided that maybe these things are linked, and that maybe her perceived greatness is somehow tied to these events. And she sort of says, "Well, we can sort all of this out more later. That they took his body, and Mag and Trill, the bard who's been in town, who they also came to the lighthouse. They're going to the library, and we need a memorial service."
"I'm sure a memorial service will be had. The elf, Haplo, was well known by everybody in this town. I assure you, there will be people who want to pay their respects to him as he passes onto the boneyard." She stops for a moment, and she says, "Ao, I have perhaps put too much pressure on you. I want you to know that I trust you, and I rely on your wisdom to determine the appropriate thing to do next."
"Wren, I didn't tell you the worst thing of all is, as we were leaving, that fey creature told us that the horror that comes out of the lighthouse," and here she sort of pauses for dramatic effect, knowing she has her audience in the way that teenagers revel in adult attention.
And Wren is like leaning forward. The like chunky stone necklace that she wears is sort of like resting on the counter as she leans forward to hear you.
Patchouli incense in the background wafting up into the air.
Yeah.
And she says, "It makes a beam of ghosts that destroys anything it touches." And then she turns and walks out, but for like artistic flair. No, like not angrily, but sort of knowing that it'll have an effect.
As you walk towards the door, she snaps her fingers, and the magically tied knot disconnects, and you're able to walk out. You hear her sort of saying, "Beam of ghosts, that doesn't sound right at all." We head on over to the Dawnflower Library, where Trill and Mag are looking for guidance from the clergy there. You're greeted by a halfling woman. This is somebody that you both, or at least Mag knows. I don't know exactly how connected Trill is to this person, but this is a halfling woman named Vandy Bandersnatch. and she is the head priestess at the library.
Larzo, I think that's not her name. It's Vandy. Did you say Banders?
I did. I did. Yeah, I said Vandy Bandersnatch. Hopefully that's not offensive in any language. I think it's hilarious that you waved at me to correct me.
I don't know.
Just letting me dig this old bander kerfuffle that I'm burying myself into.
I don't know when we're on this Zoom.
I'm sorry that I got Blimpy Bimperdim's name wrong.
No, I don't know. You look busy. I didn't want to interrupt.
I looked like I was straining to get all 50 of these NPCs straight and get all my voices ready for all of them.
Or like,
it looks like I've had a difficult week, David. Thank you.
You seem to
Way to wave at him.
You seem to have composed an original theme for each one of them too. So you were like queuing up some music. I don't know.
Didn't want to interrupt. This is licensed music. This is, of course, the Dark Fantasy Studio track, something or other.
I just didn't want to interrupt, man. So I think I've been successful there.
Yeah, no, this has been seamless.
Vandy Banderdash.
Vandy Banderdash. She's, of course, their sorting a stack of books that have been used for in research from one acolyte of Sarenrae or another. She looks up from her work, sees Mag, and claps her hands together and says, "Oh, Mag, it's fantastic that you're here. Welcome back. It's been quite a number of hours since you last were here, and I was getting concerned that maybe something had happened to you. And are you looking for the same books that you usually are, or can I help you with something else? And hello to your friend as well. I'm Vandy Banderdash, of course. Everybody knows my name. Nobody ever makes any kind of mistake in saying it, especially not people who have lots going on in their lives. But yes, I'm sorry. It's me, Vandy Banderdash. What can I do for you?"
Trill nods, and it's nice to... I've heard of you. It's nice to finally meet you. I don't usually make my way to Dawnflower Library when I'm in town. Of course, not in such a nice voice like that. She really talks more like this, so sorry about that. So yeah, I don't usually make my way towards the Dawnflower Library when I'm in town, but it's nice to finally meet you.
I think it's good that we have two incredibly fast-talking people in one scene together. I think that this is going to be a breeze to do.
Well, it's because they're both so little.
That's right. So what brings you and your friend here today?
Vandy, much has happened in the few hours since I departed. I was here yesterday, as I often am, looking to learn more about the threats that could be lurking in the fog fen.
Yes, of course, there's plenty of darkness in the fog fen.
And while I was reading, Wren, who runs the magic shop in town, she came to me and told me to look to the lighthouse at the center of Gauntlight Keep in the night. And when I looked last night, I thought I saw a shimmering blue light.
As you're talking to her, she's sort of beckoning you to follow her as she goes around the library, like picking up books and putting books away.
So we're doing kind of like a West Wing walk and talk sort of thing?
It's a West Wing walk and talk.
Yeah.
A classic
Then fast talking is good.
So Mag continues. Wren instructed me and three others to go north to the keep this morning to see if we could find out what was behind the source of the light.
She drops her book on the table and she looks at you and she says, "That sounds like a terrible idea. Why would you go to that awful place?"
Vandy, I had to know. And it was the first time there was anyone else who would come with me.
Trill looks up at Mags, very kind of a warm worry.
And Vandy, something terrible has happened while we were there. One of the four with us was Haplo the historian, and we came face to face with evil. And
it was a bird.
And the things...
Bird?
I don't know how to explain it. It was a bird. And
She puts her hand on your stomach. She reaches up and puts her hand on your hip. And she's like,
Well, she's short.
you don't need to tell me more. I can see the suffering that you carry with you. And I know that in times like these, Saren Ray's blessing, the light of Saren Ray, leads us to understanding and to peace.
Mag looks down at the floor and in a small voice says, Haplo the historian, he couldn't make it back with us. And she bows her head both to cry and to accept if Vandy will give it a blessing of Saren Ray.
So with one hand, she does that and she whispers to you, like, take your time. There is no rush to accept things like this. And then she turns to Trill and she's like, those books that I just pulled, I think you would love them. I just can tell from looking at you. That Lady Winthrop's histories. Knock your socks off. Go ahead and read them. They're great.
Trill nods, just kind of overwhelmed by this space because she's not much of a reader. No, she doesn't come into libraries much.
No. The pictures are very big.
She looks at Vandy. She goes, "Thank you. I feel like this is the first time I've been in town so often. I travel through town all the time. I'm not much of a religious person, but I really, as a follower of Desna, I feel like it's my job. It's to travel and to be everywhere, and I've never really had a chance to make close connections anywhere." And she looks over at Mag, who's still kind of in a moment of prayer and sorrow, and she looks back at Vandy and says, "This is the first time I feel like I really have friends, and I only met her this morning." She's
and she turns to both of you and she says, "It is a blessing from Saren Ray."
Oh, Mag by this point is breathing heavily. She reaches out with either arm and grasps each of the small figures by their waists and pulls them toward her in a really tight hug that probably is a little bit too hard for their tiny bodies.
Ow.
Like, have you ever seen a kid hug a kitten just like maybe a little too hard?
Trill's rib cracked a little bit, maybe.
So it's a couple days later, and the town has gathered for the memorial service for Haplo. And it looks as though the entire population of Otari is here. They're set up in the graveyard. And today, the town looks particularly like it is about to slide down the hill that it is built on into the inner sea itself. As you approach, people cast you extremely nasty looks. The three of you.
Trill's making her way to the front.
Okay.
Mag is following Trill and will give an evil eye, stink eye. Not an evil eye probably means something technical in this game.
That's a spell.
Yeah. Okay,
that's a witch. That's a witch spell.
Mag casts evil eye. No, Mag will give a narrowed eye, and a bit of extra muscle and menace to anyone who looks askance at Trill.
So Trill barges her way up to the front of the crowd. And then what happens?
She pauses. She's waiting to hear the eulogy. And she wants to be close to the She wants to be close to the front. She wants to be close to Haplo.
Okay. You look around this crowd. You see Trill up at the front. You see standing beneath a tree towards the back of the crowd, there's Wren, trying to blend into the shadows. Towards the front of the crowd, you see a short, stocky man with closely cropped red hair and a taller man with long gray hair in a charcoal gray wool sweater. You know that the shorter man is Morlabint, the wizard and owner of Odd Stories, the local bookshop, and the taller man is Karlth, his husband. Karlth, a lover of histories and the shop's non-fiction expert, seems to be paying particularly close attention to what is a rare gathering of all of Otari's residents in one place. You look around more and you see that the two best dressed people in the crowd are near the front. Trill is probably standing next to the first of these people. That is Alimora Enkelholtz. She's the half-elf owner of Whistledown Cutters, the number 2 lumber concern in town, and the source of funding for the town's education system. She's dressed elegantly, but appropriately for the occasion. The other of these two well-dressed people is Rab Chertel. He's the owner of Chertel Lumber, the third-place lumber company, which rumors around town have been talking about contentious labor disputes, financing difficulties. It's a tough time for Chertel Lumber. He looks like he would rather be anywhere else right now. You see Captain Longsaddle, who you had the interaction with when you brought Haplo's body in, clear his throat, and you see the mayor of town, Osif Menhemez, the town's mayor and the owner of the lumberyard, walk towards a clearing, an elevated clearing, like there's a small stage that he's walking towards, followed by his wife Emnala and their 5 children. He's a middle-aged man with a kind and compassionate look on his face, but when you look at him, you can see that he carries the sort of arrogance that men who have never faced setbacks in their life can't help but have. Now, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here today. It is a sad occasion, but it warms my heart to see the hard-working men and women of Otari coming together to mark the passing of a friend. I truly appreciate you joining myself, Emnala, he nods at his wife, and our dear children, Oliver, Bendrick, Janice, Bartolomeo, and Oriana. He motions to his 5 children in ascending age order, and they all bow or curtsy as they're called out. And he clears his throat and pulls a piece of paper out of his back pocket. And he unfolds it carefully and puts reading glasses on. The elf, Thalin Haplavel Valis, known to us as just Haplo, or Haplo the Historian, was a man who, in my mind, is synonymous with the town of Otari. Few of us ever spoke with him, and none of us are his blood, but there is no person here who didn't grow up or grow old seeing Haplo every day. Whether he was reading a book at the waterfront, practicing his swordcraft in this very cemetery, or terrifying our children with stories of a long-forgotten past. He pauses for a laugh break, which there's a faint smattering of laughter. This man was a fixture for our lives, and for many of us, our parents' lives as well. Because he had no family, the responsibility of this quick ceremony has fallen to me as mayor. But I truly think it is fitting. I believe in my heart that the entire town is the elf's family. And though we don't always agree, and he pauses for another bit of laughter.
As he casts about Norman, who's been firmly in the sort of middle of the audience off to the side, uses the chance to excuse himself and leaves out the back.
You know, we don't always agree, but I can tell from looking at your faces that we are all in agreement with that. And Norman disappears out the back.
Yeah, Norman is not having this.
Haplo was a reader of books. He was a connoisseur of ancient artifacts. But most of all, he was a dreamer. He spent his days reading and preparing for an adventure that many of us believed would never come. But he surprised us. On the last day of his life, he started that adventure. And on that final day, he became something none of us expected he would be. A hero. He spoke of history, but just as often, he spoke of destiny. It was his dream to embody the ideals upon which this town was founded. The ideals of the Rose Guard. The 4 heroes who centuries ago made their own dream come true right on the ground upon which we stand. This morning, as I was preparing these comments, I realized something. The qualities of each of those ancient heroes lived in Haplo on his final day. He had the education and imagination of Zarmavdian the wizard. He had the strength and dignity of the great swordswoman Vol Rajani, and murmurs and applause from a section of the crowd break out. He had the charm, humor, and optimism of the fallen Otari Ilvashti. Everyone in the audience bows their head for a reverent moment. And he had the same preference and appreciation for the quiet life as Asefna Menhemes, cleric of Erastil, my ancestor, an ancestor to many more of us, and there are more murmurs from around the crowd. These names of our founders are all around us. They are on our street signs, they are on our children and on our parents, our husbands and our wives. But they are more than just names. They are also our way of life. And Thalin Haplavel Valis believed for his long, long life, with all of his heart, that it was his destiny to walk in their shoes. To many of us, he was only a dreamer. But when he stepped into the footsteps of our founders, he proved us wrong. Destiny may not call to all of us, but it called to him. And this wise old elf decided to heed its call. Let that be a lesson for us all, that we must not ignore the call of purpose. May Abadar bless each and every one of you and carry our friend Haplo to Pharasma's judgment with good fortune. There's a moment of silence. And as a teenage boy with a trumpet steps forward to start playing a sad song, it seems like this is Trill's moment to grab the spotlight.
Absolutely. Trill sees some sad horn come up and she immediately hops up after.
There's like a gasp. It's like, oh!
Trill gets up.
And the mayor like turns to Longsaddle and is like, what's going on? As Trill starts to sing.
Well, Trill's got a couple words to say first. So Trill comes up in front of the crowd and says to everyone, Haplo would be so touched to see everyone here today. I come up here to offer a song to celebrate my friend.
I think that's that gnome that got him killed.
I come up, you may know me if you spend any time around the docks or the taverns. You know me. I'm Trill. I'm a bard. I come through town every now and then, and I've seen a lot of Absalon. I've seen a lot of the world, but I've never met anyone quite like Haplo. I was with him when we lost him, and he died a hero, just like the mayor said. So, of course, as Trill's doing all of this, she's just trying to share her love for Haplo, but also as a gameplay aspect, I am hoping that perhaps her performance can be a bit of a performance check as well. So she's got the whole town in front of her.
I think that makes some sense. Sure.
See if maybe she can engender, garner some affection from people in the town. But that's not her goal, of course, in doing this. It's actually she loves Haplo and she wants to get up, and this is what Trill does.
If this is a performance check, could Mag aid aid Trill, maybe by
Is she
like
gonna sing along?
maybe by picking her up or like putting her on her
Hold me a little
shoulders so
higher.
more people can.
Ooh,
can
does
see her.
Mags have the triangle? She's just gonna like hit it once every 8 beats, like ting, ting.
Or the clave.
Okay. So Trill gets up and she pulls her harp out. She starts strumming.
Lars has pulled out a triangle.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now. Can I start that one over? I'm so sorry. I hit the wrong chords.
You got to keep going. The crowd is like, what is going on?
The hour I first believed. Oh my gosh. This is killing me. I had it perfect before.
I think that by the time you get through
practiced.
one, I no, and it sounded great, but I think that by the time the first verse is over, it's time for that performance check. Let's see how they.
I changed the lines of the second verse.
Oh well, then let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
I got
Let's do
my
it.
triangle is still triangulating, so we're fine.
'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. We've no less days to sing Haplo's praise than when we first believed.
All
I got
right,
the
let's
second
get that.
verse. There we go.
I loved it. Fantastic. As far as I'm concerned, that performance check was a natural 20. But let's see how the crowd enjoyed it.
Well, while Robin is rolling, if anyone in the crowd had been paying attention, which obviously they weren't, as the second verse was being played, in the shadows next to Wren sidles up a teenage gray fox who, as the song closes, sort of harshly whispers to herself, "We believe." That was the closing line. We believe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was
Everyone's
in-
staring
it
at
was-
me like
No, I was trying to give it a moment of solemnity.
it
And
seemed like a moment of
uh,
disbelief. All right.
No, trust me. In the audio, that solemnity is going to carry through like you wouldn't believe.
All right.
Robin, what's your performance check?
I'm gonna roll a d20 to do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where's my d20? There.
First check of the episode. Let's go.
20. It's an 11 on the die, and with my
Sure.
modifier of, I believe it's 7,
I believe it's 7.
that would make it 18, which isn't too bad.
Yeah, I think that everybody, I think this is very difficult because people are predisposed to dislike you pretty intensely at this moment. So there's just sort of like a brief pause. There's a silence as you look out over the crowd, and the kid that you pushed away with the trumpet starts clapping slowly. And the crowd just sort of like looks at you confused and dissipates as the mayor puts his hand on his forehead. But it seems as though some people definitely appreciated that. Like a couple
Maybe
of people
the
walk
town's
up to
more
you
indifferent.
after-
No one threw anything, right? That's
Yeah, I
that's a
think that-
plus.
I think that there are like a few people who are like into culture who like walk up to you and they're like, I have to tell you, that performance that you just did really touched me. I know you're those people that killed Haplo, but I was moved by the song, and it changed the way I feel about you.
This is making me think of, and now I can't remember the exact line, and I'm sure David does, or I'm hoping he does. David has officiated several friends' weddings. We are non-religious and he has done this and, sort of get your online certificate. He does a very lovely wedding. That could be a whole other digression. But was Natalie and James...
Future potential sponsor, David Chernicoff's Wedding Services.
That's right. David, was Natalie and James's wedding the first one you ever... Yeah. He had family members come up. The bride is a good friend of ours from college who came up to him. It was a beach wedding in the Dominican Republic, not in a church.
Wow.
And what was it that they said? What was the exact line?
Yeah. So like, and this was my first time doing this. And like, I felt very much as though, like I was very, very honored and thrilled that they had asked me to do this. But like, I was like, a little unsure on my feet. And so like one of the first things that I did at the very beginning of the ceremony was I said exactly who I was, like that I was a friend, that they had asked me to do this because I really wanted everyone to know, what was going on. I'm not a religious person. If anything, I'm kind of like an religious person. And the first thing that happened after the ceremony was over was like a family, I think it was an aunt or something, a family member, close family member came up to me and said, "So do you do church work full time?"
That was it. Do you do church work full time? I knew
God
you'd remember
spoke through you.
And I sort of like, I just kind of like, I was like a little kind of wired anyway, like a little exhausted. And I just remember freezing for a minute and then just being like, no.
And that's the only response.
I was standing next to you and had a lot fewer nerves. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, this is the only time in my life I might be confused for the preacher's wife. Anyways, I feel like this has do you do church work full time kind of vibes? The locals talking to Trill.
Yeah.
yeah,
for sure.
For sure. As the crowd dissipates, what do you guys do? The ceremony is over.
So Trill comes back, standing with Mags. Are we looking for Wren? Are we trying to... What do you think, Mags?
Well, I guess so.
Trill's a little worn out. She felt like she could have done better. She was a little bummed, in all honesty, after that performance. Her heart's still very broken.
Your song was beautiful, Trill.
Oh, thank you. I tried. I feel like I gotta get my vibe back.
I think at least Mag has probably the perspective, since she wasn't the one singing the song, to know that the crowd was like aggressively against you at this time.
Trill, you should know the crowd was aggressively against you at this time. and
tears just start coming down Trill's eyes.
And by the end, I think you'd brought some of them around.
Oh, thanks, Max. That's nice. That's nice to hear, but I'd rather just have Haplo back.
As they're talking, Norman comes sauntering down off from sort of, as the crowd has dissipated, he's moving through the crowd, twirling some sort of coin in his hand, and he what's the the guard's name? Longfellow?
Longsaddle.
Longsaddle. He comes up to them and he says, "I thought that was beautiful, and I don't think this Longfellow guy's gonna miss this coin, do you?" And he sort of chuckles to himself and he claps them each on the shoulder.
Norman, you're one of a kind.
Yeah, I feel like there's a version of this where like the three of them throw their heads back and laugh, and then the camera freezes and the credits roll.
That's like the end of a Murder, She Wrote episode. I feel like they always end with Angela Lansbury laughing.
Or
The Roots of Ruin has been a Tabletop Gold production.
Every episode of Murder, She Wrote ends with Angela Lansbury committing petty theft against some expositional character. Let's
so
say,
where would you guys like to go? What would you like to do?
I don't know about you guys, but I'm thinking we should stock up. Get some goods, things that can't just be gotten from who knows where. And he flips the coin in the air and catches it again, flips it over on his hand, and he goes, "Tails, I win." Wanders into town.
I guess it's only right to continue Haplo's work. I guess we really do need to keep investigating. Maybe we should prepare if we're going to go back there.
So you guys are heading, where are you guys heading?
I think if we pass any kind of a watering hole, Mag could use a drink. Maybe just one.
Oh,
one
Trill's always happy for that. Trill's down.
I don't think Mag feels forward enough to suggest it, but if we pass by anywhere, I think she'd be tempted to to duck in and buy her new friends around.
I kind of like that idea of like, let's go pour one out for Haplo. Yeah.
And as they're walking back into town, once Norman sort of sees they're with him, he reaches into his back pocket and pulls out a leather volume, and he says, "You guys aren't going to believe this, but I stopped by Haplo's place and I found this old journal. He hadn't written anything there, but I'm thinking if we ever go back, we can write down what he would have wanted us to. Any discoveries, any findings, and maybe someday a great volume on the history of Otari can be published."
So the closest bar on the way is the Rowdy Rockfish, which is on the like very near the waterfront between the graveyard and Wren's shop, if that's where you're interested in going.
Yeah.
So the Rowdy Rockfish is the quietest of Otari's taverns. This is a pretty solemn, quiet place to spend time.
As the gang is heading towards the Rowdy Rockfish, if anyone was paying attention, which everyone is a little overcome with emotion, they would notice that Norman was sort of naturally heading to Crook's Nook, but when he realizes that's not where everyone's going, he turns and follows them into the Rowdy Rockfish.
Oh, I love that.
Is it like that thing where your left foot kicks out way in front and then spins
And he
around
sort
and
of uses like a
direction?
silly elbow bit up in the air to like turn himself around and follow them in.
Yeah.
Like a
Oh my
full-
God, I love that.
Grabbing onto a street sign and just sort of twirling around it.
Start walking it,
himself
and like
around.
by habit though, as he's in habit trying to walk towards Crook's Nook, as Trill starts walking into the tavern, she immediately just like puts her harp on her hip and just starts strumming, kind of feeling the vibe of the place, hoping maybe she'll get a free drink out of it by entertaining some people. It's, her usual MO.
So Trill starts working the crowd. As you walk into the Rowdy Rockfish, you see a giant mural painted on the back wall of the bar. This mural shows a man painted in a heroic pose, lifting his arms up in the air in front of a great shining sea. And in that sea, you see an enormous island being lifted up by the man as if by magic. All of you recognize this mural. One, because you have all seen this place before, probably. But you recognize the significance of this mural because it is a mural telling the story of Eridan, who is the god of humanity in this world. He was a survivor of an ancient civilization who stepped forward into deityhood, and his big sort of like thing that he accomplished that allowed him to ascend to godhood was that he lifted the Isle of Kortos, the very island that you are on right now. He lifted it from the bottom of the sea and made this island, which houses the city of Absalom, which is the largest city in the world, and of which he is the founder. And there's a lot more to say about this. There's tons of things to say about Eridan, but the main thing to know is that he was the god of humanity. He disappeared for some time, and prophecies told of him returning to Golarion like 100, 120, 140 years ago to usher in a new golden age. But just before that happened, he died. Nobody knows how. Nobody knows why. All of Eridan's clerics lost their magic powers. And now we sort of live in a time that is defined by the fact. This is like the number one headline of what has happened in this world, is that the prophecy of this golden age has not come to pass because Eridan has died. So this mural here in this bar is telling a very common religious story of a god that no longer has any worshipers, but it's also kind of a local story of like, this is how this place came to exist. It's kind of like you go to Philadelphia and there's Ben Franklin hanging out with the Liberty Bell or whatever.
So he's like Ben Franklin and Jesus Christ?
Yes, he's like Ben Christ, basically.
Ben Christ, okay.
All right. Okay. So
And-
you could have just said from the jump, like, there's a picture of Ben
is
Christ
there.
on the
Yeah.
wall. And it would have
So you walk towards the bar, Trill playing her music. And as you sit at the bar waiting for a drink, it's a pretty quiet time. Most of the people in town were at this memorial service. And there's a woman who approaches, looks you left to right, recognizes you, crosses her arms, and says, "Okay, well, what can I do for you?"
A round of drinks, please.
She nods quietly, turns around, and starts pouring the drinks. You hear a sound coming from your right on the far end of the bar, just a and you look over, and there's a shaggy-looking drunk with a patchy beard just sitting there, presumably having drunk all day. He looks over at you and he says, "You, come over here."
Norman sidles up next to him.
And he looks at you and he says, "I saw you with that old elf, that Haplo."
What a guy, huh? Says Norman,
what a
smiling.
guy. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I knew him better than you. I drank with him every night, starting when he was very old and I was very young. And now I'm very old and he's gone. And let me tell you something about him.
Norman nods encouragingly.
He scooches over next to you, and it's just like the other two of you just see Norman trapped by this guy who's just like, right? I hear a lot of people today talking about the fallen hero. Well, he was no hero. I hear people talking about Haplo, called by destiny. Yeah, there's no destiny. He himself would talk about the magic of the four founders and how he was going to be like them. Well, guess what? He was a fool. And now he's a dead fool.
Norman has...
Have we gotten our drinks yet?
Yeah, as this happens, the proprietor brings you 3. Like this is a nice bar. Like these are very clean taps that she's running here. She's gone to a barrel, opened it up, poured a light but very crisply balanced sort of pilsner for you.
Norman, Trill and Mag could probably tell he's sort of off put by this guy, but he's nodding encouragingly, and his interest is piqued because he hasn't found too many people who knew Haplo that well, and he says, "What was the craziest thing he ever told you, huh? Let's have a drink to the old chap."
Trill comes over with her pills and she's feeling very judgmental of everyone recently, and she comes over. She's kind of glaring at this guy after he said that last thing about he was a fool, and she's prepared to fight. She's prepared for fisticuffs with this guy.
Yeah, Mag feels the same way. She steps behind Trill and crosses her arms and narrows her eyes and lets out a little.
Norman can sense that they are looking for a fight, but he wants to learn what there is to learn, and he's hoping he can find out something about Haplo. So he sort of holds his hand down low, and also in the way perhaps more of a teenage girl than of an adult man who's just gotten a new journal. He flips open the journal of Haplo's that has nothing written in it, and he has it on the table, and he has a pen poised to write anything down this old guy says.
Does he put little hearts over his eyes?
He doesn't.
So as this scene forms up, the proprietor of the bar takes a sort of like smirk on her face and leans against the wall with her arms folded in front of her, just ready to look at exactly what it is that's going to happen here with this guy who has been ruining her day so far.
Every day for the last 80 years.
Pretty much, I think. I think that's reasonable. He sees you pulling out this journal and he says, "Oh, good, a book. Perfect. Just perfect for Haplo, right?"
But seriously,
Look.
man, what was the craziest thing he ever did?
The craziest thing he did was go with you and get killed. Isn't that obvious? Doesn't everybody see that? He says, look, that Haplo was so obsessed with his future and his destiny that he let it lead him into horrible danger. Why? Because he wanted so badly to see himself in those books he spent all day reading. Listen to me. There's no fate. There's no destiny. There's no book you can read that'll tell you the future. Anybody who's talking about heroic fate, all heroic fate does is lure the foolish to their deaths. And he raises his hand up like he's going to be like, cheers, and like nobody comes with him, so he just drinks by himself.
You're just luring yourself to liver poisoning.
Okay, so that's my fate. That's where I'm going. Well, I bet I'm around a lot longer than you are.
What a noble way to go. Huh.
Mag steps forward and spits on the floor at the man's feet. Haplo was no fool. That's where you're wrong.
No. That's where you're wrong. Haplo was a fool for believing that life had anything left for him. A fool for refusing to accept that his day had passed him by, and at the end of his life, he was nothing special. He wasn't chosen. His day was over. He was too old, and his belief in himself is what got him killed within 3 hours of going to that horrible
Mag grabs him by the shirt and pulls him up off of his stool.
The bartender steps forward, like eyeing you.
Trill stands up on that stool to try and get up to eye level.
And Mag says, Haplo was a man who believed in something greater than himself and who lived a life of greater purpose than just soaking in drink all day long. And then she gingerly lifts Trill back up off the stool and roughly shoves the man back down in his place.
As Trill's still up at eye level, she goes, and who the fuck are you?
And he gets he gets thrown down to the chair, splashes his beer like splashes up into the air as he sort of like regains his composure. And he just starts he's too drunk. He doesn't know what's going on. He's just like he just starts laughing and he points in front. He's like, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" And he points at the mural. And he says, "Eridan himself, the so-called god of humanity, he lifted this island we're on right now out of the ocean. He was prophesied to come back. It was the age of glory. That was destiny. Everyone believed it. And he's dead. There's no age of glory. Even for a god, destiny turned out to be a lie. You think it would be any different for that elf? Going on all the time about magic or fate or any other full nonsense." And he just starts laughing and he holds his bottle up and he says, "Me? I'm going to stick with the destiny of finishing this bottle." And he grabs a bottle away from the bar, from underneath the bar, starts chugging it and like falls back on the floor, breaking the bottle as he passes out on the floor of the bar.
And Norman hops down, puts his feet on either side of the guy's chest and sort of, he's passed out. He's not trying to hurt him, but he pops his chin up a little and his mouth kind of lolls open. And he looks in there and he gives him sort of two quick, somewhere in between a slap and a pat on the face. And he says, "You know what waits for you, bud? Cold, dark night and some better brushing habits. Let's get out of here." And he gives him one more pop across the face.
Okay, so I'm going to give a hero point. I'm going to give a hero point to Zoe for that, and I'm going to give a hero point to Robin for her amazing grace, which I was too transfixed by in the moment.
That was amazing. Also, you guys, this has been like amazing to just be like, "Oh my god, Haplo, who knew he was so loved?"
So you work your way back to Wren's Wonders, the becanvassed magic shop, to stock up on supplies, right?
Yeah.
Here at Wren's Wonders, you walk in, you see Wren tidying up a particularly volatile-looking batch of potions and alchemical items. And she turns to the three of you, and she looks like she's about to cry. She just says to you, I am so sorry that what has happened, and I'm sorry for the pain that this has put upon you, and I'm sorry for whatever other pain it is that the stars have ordained for us may put us through as well. These are not happy times.
Well, I better get some good stuff to help us continue through this then.
As you say that, another person walks into the shop, and you turn around and you see that it is the mayor walking in with Captain Longsaddle.
Captain One Less Coin Longsaddle.
The mayor looks incredibly tired. His body language is tense, and his eyes are too wide open. He looks at you, and he says, "Listen to me. This has not been an easy day. Maybe doing that memorial was a mistake. But that elf was such a fixture around town that not doing it would have made too many people upset. Okay? But listen to me." And he squares the three of you up, and he casts like a scornful look at Wren. He says, "This is the last of these memorials we're going to do. Maybe that Haplo had admirers or people felt a connection to him throughout this town, but none of the rest of you do. And I don't want to scare these good people anymore. Let people live their lives. Let people work and make a living."
That's all we want to do. We want to protect these people.
You're protecting these people by getting the town mascot killed? That's protecting them? Look, it's not going to become a trend among the young and foolish to go into that lighthouse and get themselves killed, so do not go back.
It'll be a trend among the young to be killed here in town if the threat of that lighthouse isn't addressed.
He's like, the only danger that lighthouse presents is to those who are foolish enough to step foot inside of it. And he turns to Wren. And he says, "You should have known better than to send these people in there. I'm happy for you to run this business here in town, but why don't you keep your involvement in our town limited to these walls?" And he points at the canvas surrounding you. Dismissively. He's saying like these walls, like it's a joke. Like these walls. I don't need these visions that you go on and on about, filling the heads of others and leading them to do some fool thing.
Trill looks up at him. Yeah. As she does to everyone, and she's narrowing her eyes because, man, she's done. She's mad at herself. She's mad at the town. She looks up at him and she says, "Remember these words, because one day you're going to be eating them."
I'm okay with words. What I'm not okay with are people winding up dead in the middle of daylight as we are trying to keep this lumber mill running and trying to keep people alive and eating food, dinner, serving themselves, having children, raising families, doing what they've done.
Is all you care about business and lumber and wood?
As their voices grow more heated, a man with dark hair and beard, pale skin and green eyes, with a sneering, ironic grin beneath his dark hood, sleek, black leather armor etched with religious symbols in silver and bone white. At his side hangs a long, curved dueling sword, forged in the Aldori style, a buckler depending from the same belt, and a brace of daggers with elkhorn hilts slung across his chest, walks in.
"You know, people die. It's what we do best."
And we'll pick up from there next time.
The Roots of Ruin is a Tabletop Gold production, produced under the Paizo Incorporated Community Use Policy. The Roots of Ruin uses trademarks and/or copyrights owned by Paizo Inc., used under Paizo's Community Use Policy. We are expressly prohibited from charging you to use or access this content. Paizo does not recognize, endorse, or sponsor this project in any way. Original characters and content are the property of Tabletop Gold. For more information about Paizo Inc. and Paizo products, visit paizo.com. We at Tabletop Gold would love to hear from you. Email us at letters@tabletopgold.com and find all our social links at tabletopgold.com.